That's started. So again, welcome. And yeah, if we just do a quick round table then, just to introduce ourselves. So I'll just go round in the order that you're on my screen. So I'm Sam Perry. I'm Green Bargaining Officer for Yorkshire and Humber TUC. Chris.
I'm Chris Copland. Amongst other things, I coordinate the Friends of the Earth group for York. So Sam's invited me to come along, and I'm here as a guest. I'm not myself any longer a member of a trade union because I'm retired, but I have been in the past. As a group, something I think it's highly likely we will want to get involved with as we go into the start of the new year is collaboration with other groups on the election of the mayor and also our Warm Homes campaign. So I'm just very interested to come along today and really eavesdrop and listen to find out about what this group does. But Sam visited our group at the end of 2023 and gave us a very interesting presentation about just transition. So very pleased to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Catherine? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Catherine. I'm here in various guises. I'm a member of the NEU, and I'm a coordinator of a network that we run with Eco-Educators. I'm secretary of Wakefield Trades Council, and we do quite a lot of stuff on climate and stuff, and we're key to the Just Transition Wakefield group. So yeah.
Great stuff. Thanks. Dave?
Hi, I'm a GMB rep at Centrica British Gas, and I have the energy seat at the GMB Regional Council for Yorkshire and the North East.
Good stuff. Joe?
Hi everyone. I'll put my camera on for a bit, but I keep getting messages to say that I'm unstable, which is just my computer insulting me as usual. I am a Unite rep at the University of Leeds. On the branch committee there, but there's also a 3 unions climate and ecological working group across UCU, Unite and Unison, so also participate in that. And in my day job, I also do research on unions and just transition.
Brilliant. Rosie?
Hi everyone, I'm Rosie. So I'm a staff member at NEU, and in that role I'm a national training officer, so it's more of a national role with NEU, but I live in Sheffield, and I'm based at the Yorkshire and Humber region, which is in Doncaster. And one of the projects that I work on is our new Green Reps and Environmental Officers training, which is brand new for NEU, and we've just piloted it. We're doing it again in April. And so I do quite a lot of work on Green Reps, been thinking about just transition as part of that training, part of that project, and working with the NEU Climate Network. I also am a Unite officer for our staff Unite branch in NEU, because we have a union branch as staff as well, and I'm the environmental officer there as well, so kind of got slightly 2 hats on really.
Excellent stuff, thanks. The order has all changed. Where was I up to? Maybe John?
Thanks, Sam. Hi, everyone. My name is John, Unison Branch Chair at Leeds Teaching Hospitals. Nice to see you all.
Brilliant. Ellen? I don't think we've done yet.
Hi, yeah, I'm Ellen. I'm a member of the Unite Community Leeds Wakefield and York branch, and a delegate to Leeds Trades Council, and also to the West Yorkshire Association of Trades Councils. And I'm also secretary of the Campaign Against Climate Change Trade Union Group.
Excellent stuff. And just Debbie.
Hello. For Chris Copeland, there's no reason not to be in a trade union, because you can join as a retired member of UCU, and it costs peanuts. And it would be very helpful to have your contact to advise me about York University. I'm environmental officer both for my UCU branch, which is Yorkshire and Humber retired members, and also for York Trades Council. And last night we put together, well, the other delegates, the other people who came to the Trades Council approved of what I'm taking to the York Climate Commission, because at long last that is having a rethink, because it had absolutely no trade union representation up until now. It was just a few secretive bosses who prided themselves on being nimble and not contaminated by the delays that the riffraff would bring in. So my next aim is to reach out to UCU workplace members around York. I'm also in Unite Community, and I gather that Wakefield are hoping to spread the word a bit about the Unite's community wealth building publication. So that's interesting, because that was sort of queried a little bit last night. Sorry to bang on. Shut up now.
That's all good. Debbie is, of course, entirely right. Not being in work doesn't stop you being in a union, so do get signed up. Excellent. Thanks, everyone, for coming. So just the admin stuff. Circulate the minutes from the last meeting, and there's a recording online as well. Any issues with any of that anyone noticed? No, excellent.
Just one tiny thing, Sam. It says that the We Make Tomorrow conference is Saturday the 28th. It's actually, I think, I'll double check, I think it's a Sunday the 28th.
It is. Yeah.
So it's
right.
reorganised for a Sunday at the end of the month.
Mm-hmm. And it's got a stroppy Eventbrite, so I just wrote direct to Angus about that.
You're right. It is on a Sunday. Good note.
Just to mention, there was one action point for me, which was I mentioned as part of the international just transition study that we're doing, came across some work that IG Metall are doing in Germany on. They've had a kind of a set course for them reps and members on concepts of degrowth, post-growth, and in a sense, what does that mean for trade unions? I managed to dig out, or I've managed to get a colleague to send me the brochure. But it's all in German. So unless anybody can speak German, I will try and get them to translate the core bits of that. Just thought it'd be useful to share, to see what they've been doing, because apparently they've been running it for quite a long time.
It did sound really interesting, actually. Yeah. So if you are able to find, I don't speak German, if you are able to find an English version, that would be helpful to share.
Just to interrupt for a moment, if you go on Google Translate, because a year or so ago, I had a load of German documents that I wanted to access. You can feed documents through Google Translate, and the translation is not bad.
Thanks for that. I just needed it because the brochure is actually all of their offering, which is over 250 pages. I just need to go back to get some keywords that, because the Google Translate doesn't translate the keywords. If you get what I mean, you've got to put in the German search term.
Okay.
That you're looking for. So I'll get there. Hopefully. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not very clever until you help it. But it's getting better.
Yeah, it learns, doesn't it? It's one of these frightening systems. So matters arising from the previous thing. I had a couple of bits, which maybe we'll do first and then see if anyone has any follow-ups. So last time we circulated the sort of general motion on climate action or just transition that's been put together. We had a bit of a chat about that. I think that's in the attachments to this meeting here. I wondered if, well, I guess, has anyone managed to get that through a branch, or people considering doing any of that? Ellen, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just to say that we passed it in our branch yesterday, and we're thinking of trying to promote it through the Trades Council route, because we don't have a policy conference coming up this year. And anyway, as a community branch, we don't have an input into that, even if we did.
Right, of course, yeah. Good stuff. Catherine?
We've passed it as a branch and as the NEU, and we've passed it apparently we passed it as Trades Council, so that we are hoping that we'll get it through Wiretuck as well. You know, so that's our next sort of thing. So we have to make sure that everything else is in the right place. Yeah, because there's only so many motions that you can take through.
That's true. Alan, do you want to? Are you coming back on what Catherine said?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Catherine as a different branch having passed it. Whether did you make any tweaks to the wording, because it's obviously the way that it's phrased. It's, you know, it all starts with conference believes conference, blah blah blah, and we were just wondering, you know, what tweaks are helpful to actually progress it through the appropriate structures.
As a branch, as a branch, we have the NEU version, which has all education items. But I passed the version to the general version of the Trade Council. I'll unmute again.
On mute. If people could stay on mute while they're not speaking, because I'm getting a bit of feedback on mine. Okay, that sounds great. Joe's got a hand up, so we'll go to her.
Yeah, just to say, it was sort of mentioned in our branch exec that higher education in Unite has a policy conference at the end of this year, so we're going to so we're just at the start of the process in terms of gathering motions, but we'll put it forward.
Excellent stuff. I mean, I guess in the idea behind this is that it's coming from all angles and, you know, trying to get past as many places as possible. So if wording is changed a little bit, it sort of potentially won't matter because they'll be merged later on up the hierarchy anyway. But as long as the key stuff is there, right? Did anyone else manage to, or has anyone else thought about this, putting it through their branch? Okay, that's fine. It is attached to this thing and it will be on the minutes as well. It's nicely broad, I think, that it should be fairly inclusive. So most branches should be able to pass it without too much, you know, without it impacting specific issues or meeting much resistance. But the idea, if enough people pass it, then it kind of sets a precedent across the movement to kind of as a bargaining position, I suppose, going forward. Did anyone else have anything else to add on that before we move on? No, good stuff. I also circulated, and I appreciate it was really long, but I also circulated a draft of our retrofit policy paper that we have put together in the TUC. Just for any feedback, if anyone had time to have a look at that or wanted to discuss any of that in this forum, has anyone managed to have a look at that? That's fine, not a problem if not. Oh, Joe, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, sorry for being a girly swat. Yeah, I did. I did have a read.
Good.
No, I think it reads. It reads really well. It's really thorough. It's really damning of all the bitty bits of initiatives that have been out there and, you know, and failed. It builds good justification for the, you know, a really thorough set of recommendations. I just wonder. I guess it's partly thinking in terms of my comments. It partly depends on, in a sense, who it's mostly for. If it's mainly for getting different unions on board, I would just bring the stuff about workers and unions more to the fore, in the sense they're the kind of one of the last sets of stakeholders that are in there. Now, I completely understand it absolutely focuses on local authorities being kind of primary movers, which I totally understand. But it was more of reflection on that than anything in terms of the content. I didn't have time, I guess, to think about it too much, but I also wondered in those sections for other stakeholders whether it could also just keep banging on about the issue of good quality work, dialogue with unions, as being central to whatever else that you're recommending to the other stakeholders. Thank you, but I thought,
yeah,
it's an excellent
no, that's great. That's helpful stuff. Thanks for looking through it, Joe. The work has continued on it actually since I circulated it, and we've put more stuff in on exactly those points. Actually, that was the feedback we got elsewhere. So workers and union rights and continuous dialogue and worker-led transition stuff all comes into it a lot more, as well as some of the technicalities about what needs to be, how we need to upskill workers and speaking to workers to ask for the skills they require to actually get the work done and do this effectively. For those who, sorry, yeah, Joe, do you want to come back?
Yeah, no, that's great. That sounds really sensible. There was one final comment I had, which I've no idea if there's decent data about it, but whether there's quite a lot of data up front. Well, he might have moved it around, but there's quite a lot of data about how crap our housing stock is. I wondered if there was anything that was sort of more on the positive side in terms of the benefits of retrofit. In terms of, I have no idea if there's any data around about, either in terms of health benefits or cost savings for people. There's sort of a promise of reduced energy bills, but I don't know if there's any data out there that, or even who would know if there is decent data out there. But it was just a thought of, again, selling it as a positive, as well as the reason, the negative reasons in terms of emissions and so on. The co-benefits, so to speak.
Thanks. Yeah, no, definitely. I think there is some stuff in there. I don't know when that went in, but yeah, that could potentially be fed back. I suppose in a way it's designed, and to answer your question earlier, it's mostly for Labour to try and change their national policy on this, or try and shape their warmer homes policy that they've kind of vaguely announced. So I think there's probably a sense that they already want to do it. They already know why they want to do it. It's just about making the version of whatever they do work for us in the Labour movement, work for workers. But actually, that probably could be stated more clearly, the clear co-benefits of this stuff. Ellen?
The thing that's come to mind for me is there is Tom Woolley has written a book about retrofit, in which a lot of it's quite critical of the retrofit work that's already been done. I mean, he's very much an advocate for, not using materials with high carbon footprints and stuff like that. But he actually cites quite a number of instances where the data has failed to show health improvements, but he puts that down to faulty use of materials and faulty workmanship, basically. So, he is an advocate for, obviously, for energy efficiency upgrades, massive advocate, but he's done a lot of work on exposing where it's been done badly and how that has had negative health effects in some cases because the work being done that's caused cold bridging and molds and stuff like that. But and yeah, about the materials and the potential for internal pollution from certain materials. So it's worth. I just thought it's worth looking at that sort of stuff without. To me, it all reads a bit too negative, if you know what I mean. But it's worth looking at it from the point of view of emphasising the importance of high quality training and doing everything properly. because if it's done badly, it's catastrophic, because there's a whole culture war going on against housing retrofit, and anything that goes wrong feeds into that.
Definitely, I think it's a valid point to make. Thanks for adding that.
And I think Tom Woolley's done some work with some of the West Yorkshire projects. I don't know in exactly what capacity, but
okay, sure. Debbie?
Hello, there's an echo going on. I just wondered, I'm such a cynic, but is retrofit a little bit like electric cars? Like, we need public transport, not private. And eventually, when I'm dead and buried in my grave, you're all going to be huddling in warm hubs or running away from, like, there's collective answers as well as like maintaining the nuclear family in their sad little boxes. What a cynic. Bye-bye.
Yeah, no, I suppose I take that point. I mean, there are 30 million homes at the moment, and I think probably we could move to a communal living situation, but it's probably a lot more effort and would be an uphill struggle than just making the homes that the buildings that we currently have more effective. I think it's probably the logic here. But yeah, take your point. Okay, excellent. Let's well, I think you'll probably know the basics of what that was about anyway, the paper and what it's there. It is still there, and I'll take into account those bits with a new with some updates. We're hoping to get it sort of finished and published and sent off to Ed Miliband's team, who are the primary audience, in the next couple of weeks, and so we'll sort of see. They've made some positive sounding noises so far, but we'll see how that goes. Okay, we spent quite a lot. Were there any other matters arising from the minutes last time? Anyone wanted to raise anything? No, good stuff. Okay, we'll move on to the announcements then. So we've got a few bits coming up. We've got We Make Tomorrow, which is on Sunday, the 28th of January. I assume a chunky are already going to be there. It looks like it's going to be a good day. It's in London at the NEU headquarters. So I'll circulate the details of that if anyone wants to join. There's also South Yorkshire Climate Alliance are putting on their speed dating event this Saturday, I think it is, which sounds quite positive. As I understand, it's not speed dating. It's getting together and talking about it. You don't have to be single to attend. Go on, Ellen. You talk to it.
It's not on speed dating. It's on the We Make Tomorrow, because it occurs to me that we've got a meeting that's quite heavy in education and health workers, and those are the two areas where we're lacking in having specific contributors to the sessions. I'm trying to coordinate a thread on what technically might be termed social reproductive labour. In other words, care, childcare, elder care, education, health, all of the stuff that's to do with working with people and making them, keeping them well and well-being, because that the importance of integrating that into a view of what a sustainably managed society looks like. Yeah, so I mean, if anybody, I know people in those sectors are particularly overworked and busy, but it would be really great if anybody could either offer or push, shovel anybody in my direction that can help with that.
Thanks, Ellen. They've all got your details, which will circulate in the minutes as well, so people can join if they need to, or get in contact rather. Debbie, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I put my hand up about speed dating, but before I forget, on sort of well-being, the women's budget group have got a lot of stuff and we had them at York Trades Council event, you know, for women, and so that would be a good thing for, you know, adding that whole dimension. And on speed dating, it's just a way of getting you all around the room to make you talk to different people, and if you know, depends how they do it, because it can be quite effective so that people get to talk to you know, don't get stuck with people they know. Just a facilitating gambit. I don't know why it's making me put two hands up all the time.
No, that's fine. It's not two hands. You're second in the hand queue. I think, Ellen, is that a legacy hand, or do you want to come in? Legacy. Okay, brilliant. Has anyone else got any? I mean, it's the beginning of the year, so it's always a bit quiet at this time, but has anyone else got any announcements of events or anything coming up?
Looks like we've been joined by Simon from Friends of the Earth.
We have, yeah. Hi, Simon. Welcome to the call. Let's do Rosie, do you want to come in? Then we'll go to Simon.
Yeah, just an announcement, which is mainly for NEU, but I guess lots of people know people are NEU members. So yeah, we've got our second round of our Green Reps training coming up. So that's the second time it's ever been run, and it's in April. And applications, I think, are open now. I will double check that and get the link sent round to you. But it's 26th and 27th of April, and it'll be in Nottingham, but it's national, so it's residential. And Catherine, that's in particular one for you to share, but obviously if anybody else knows anybody, then yeah, we're excited about it. So
Definitely, no, it's exciting stuff. Could you send me just a link to the thing so I can get that round just after this?
Yes, I will. And one thing I'll say is, if you do know anyone who's interested, the reason I'm mentioning it now is these things get full really quickly. It's about, I think I've opened up 20 places, and the last one was full, and everybody had a good time. So yeah, I'll send it round, and if you know any NEU people, then pass it on.
Great stuff. Thanks. Simon.
Hi folks, and thanks Sam for inviting me to this. Just a quick heads up that on May the 2nd there's going to be mayoral elections across large parts of Yorkshire, with the exception of East Riding. And at Friends of the Earth, we are looking to deliver some events around those mayoral elections, including climate and nature hustings. But if people are interested in joining forces on that, please give me a shout, and we can discuss that and see how that involvement looks like going forward.
Brilliant, thanks a lot. Yeah, no, it's creeping close, isn't it? The May election dates, and it's getting bigger every time in Yorkshire. So yeah, quite interesting to see how that develops. We'll do Debbie, then Chris.
Maybe Chris has got his hand up for the same reason, but Yorkshire Gathering of Friends of the Earth is all set to come to York at the end of June, and so you'll hear more about that later.
Good stuff, thanks.
I was just going to add a little postscript on what Simon said. I was contacted a couple of days ago by the Cycle Campaign in York, who were saying that they were hoping to be setting up collaboration between themselves and the Civic Forum in York, and were asking if we would like to get involved. So I kind of feel like we may be pushing out a little bit of an open door. There is already interest in that. And frankly, if we've got the Civic Forum, the Cycle Campaign, Friends of the Earth, and trades councils or whatever just within the city of York, I think we've got quite a nice start for that. But taking into account May is not very far away, so we do need to get cracking on this quite soon.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's good that they're working with the Civic Forum. I'm going to follow that up. Catherine.
I'll just, it is a Wakefield focus, but I think I'll tell you about it. It's an age, we're having the Just Transition Wakefield are having our AGM on the 31st of January. We've got Professor Paul Chatterton and the speaking, and the Climate Change and Partnership lead for Wakefield. Just Transition Wakefield is a sort of collaboration with the Trades Councils and Friends of the Earth and a whole load of other partner organisations now as well. So we're really quite excited about this meeting. So 31st, if you know anyone in Wakefield, please, or would like to come along, then you can join our mailing list and whatever. Thank you.
Great stuff, thanks. It does sound like an interesting event, actually. It's a good. These AGMs are often very short and boring, but that you've fleshed it out quite nicely. I saw the advert the other day. Okay, brilliant. So we'll move on to the sort of substance of this thing then. We normally have a sort of topic presentation and then a sort of discussion about what we do about that. We've had a few of these now. This time, where the idea is to return to the climate jobs action plans, which is something that the CUC talks about, and explore them a little bit. So I've got a very short presentation which we'll just talk through, just to remind everyone what they're about, and then we can we'll open it up for a bit of a chat. How do I share this thing? Right, so hopefully we can see that. So yeah, no, won't speak for long, just a brief introduction. So essentially what we're talking about when we talk about climate jobs action plans in the TUC or in the movement generally are alternative plans. So these are kind of inspired, I guess, by the 1976 Lucas Aerospace Plan, which was a workers' plan for, I mean, you'll all know, I think, but it's a workers' plan put forward by shop stewards for an alternative plan, strategic plan for the future. So it had detail about new designs and new products and market analysis and proposed training programs and restructures for the organization. And specifically, the important thing is that it came from the unions. It came from workers saying, look, instead of closing this production, which was what was proposed at the time, let's move what we're doing into socially useful work. We'll change what we're doing and create a sort of a better organization than the one we kind of inherited. There's a quote on the page from Mike Cooley there, which you can have a look at. I think it's quite good as a quote, and that end bit is the important bit, that the decision for him was whether to act as architects or behave like bees. So whether you design your workplace and lead essentially from the workers, or whether you just follow orders like a bee, just kind of repetitive tasks. Climate jobs action plans are these kind of worker-led plans. They're worker-led plans for the future of an organization, and they're particularly timely now. And the reason we're talking about this, because we're going through a climate emergency, and workplaces and charities and organizations and communities are going to have to change how they're doing things. There is obviously some change already, but it's not at the scale that we need it to be in order to actually reach any of or meet any of these goals that we are setting ourselves. It looks like 2023 was the hottest year known so far, and it looks like we're close to that 1.5. which was supposed to be a limit, but it now looks like a certainty that we're going to meet 1.5 degrees of warming globally in the next few years, which is very upsetting, and shows that we're just not moving fast enough. And where there is progress, it's not so far been worker-led. It's not being led by the people. It's being led by bosses. in a very limited way. So that's the idea, that it needs to have a sort of just transition at its heart and focus on those 4 things I've popped on the slide. Sustainable strategy, so we're talking about answering the question, kind of, can we go on like this? Is the organisation or charity or community viable in the long term? Can it keep doing what it's doing? The answer is kind of obviously no, in most cases, and so therefore what do we do about that? Well, you know, we sort of, that's the basis for the new plans. The next one is sustainable work. Can employees do the work that's needed? You know, if change is going to happen, are the employees or members of the community currently set up to be able to work in that way, to behave in that way? If not, then we need to help them reskill or change how they're doing things in order to carry out that work in a sustainable way. Positive decarbonisation. Obviously, decarbonisation and environmental protection need to happen, but there's a danger, obviously, that could have negative consequences on workers or on communities. This needs to be win-wins for both, and so the Climate and Jobs Action Plan deals with both sides of those in a positive way. And then also self-sustaining momentum. It needs to be a long-term plan so that it's not just reliant on whoever happens to be the Green Rep, whoever happens to be interested in this at the moment, be they a trade union or a CEO or whoever, but it needs to build itself going forwards. So I think there's basically 2 ways of doing this. To kind of kick this off, there's Spark campaigns and there's building framework for change. So Spark campaigns, there's a bit of information here. So these are short-term, specific, winnable campaigns that prove the point that unions can lead, or that you know, worker voice could make an effective change. And there's some examples of what these might be. And then the idea is that once that campaign has been won, then it kind of it gets the ball rolling and gives space for further developments. There's a couple of examples. Llandau Hospital in Wales. Unison came up, which is the union there, came up with this idea of a health meadow. So it's a rewilding area of a bit of wasteland, which they did. It's a resource for workers to step outside and be outside the hospital, but it's also something for patients to recuperate in. It obviously also is positive for nature recovery, and it builds that kind of positive workplace, worker, community, environment cycle of sort of sustainability. So that's a campaign they won, and as a result, they've kind of been able to go on and have further campaigns in the hospital. UCU ran a campaign in Cardiff University, not unique, but to get it the university to declare a climate emergency and to start monitoring things. It was just a particularly well-run campaign, and these, I mean, this has been done all over the place, but the idea of getting a climate emergency and therefore kind of your foot in the door in order to get further concessions later on. The alternative, or potentially running alongside, is the kind of framework for change argument. So this is about negotiating in advance a channel by which the unions or workers can liaise with the people in charge of a community or of a charity or an organisation in order to kind of make sure that workers are represented at each point. Obviously, that's kind of core union stuff, but climate adaptation and environmental issues usually aren't really within the scope of those existing agreements, and so you know, if to kind of create a framework that ensures that unions are constantly thinking about climate change and that workers and bosses are constantly having this kind of space for dialogue between the two is obviously a helpful thing to do. There's some bits there that would need to be taken into account. Good examples, BFAWU, they have, their green reps are called health, safety and environment reps. With Greg's, they now have a permanent forum where the HSE, the Health, Safety, Environment reps, sit with Greg's leaders in a continuous forum and negotiate as issues come up and how to continually decarbonise. Very effective way of doing things. It's a new union structure and it's worked quite well. Another example was Bristol Unions United. So Horizon House is a particular property which housed multiple government departments and quangos, all represented by different unions. Well, the unions got together and realised that they could together negotiate with the owners of the property itself to sort of decarbonise across all of those organisations. And so they've essentially set up that framework for change, which is then expanded over time. So they've sort of stepped out their traditional union structure and their traditional negotiating forums to do that, but it's resulted in a very effective forum. And so, I mean, obviously the plan here is that Climate Jobs Action Plan would wrest strategic control from the powers that be and put it with workers. Maybe not all workers or all power, but maybe, cooperatives could do this, right? They could take over. But some at least, and we're constantly evolving what that would be. I think key here would be green reps or people wearing that kind of hat, whether officially or not, and so whether they can win rights, facility time, access to information. That's going to be really key to whether these plans can be put forward. There's different ways of doing this. Obviously, BFAWU that I mentioned earlier use health and safety reps for this, so they kind of already have that facility time. But there's different approaches that could work one way or the other to do the same thing. But there's different ways we're doing that, and I mean the TUC has resources on facility rights for green reps as well. So I guess just open this up. We'll think about some of these questions just as maybe a basis for a further discussion. Spark campaigns or the frameworks for worker-led change. What would kind of work for you? There are also question marks about what we do with disputes. Unions can only dispute certain things, obviously, within the kind of framework of the law. There might be space for certain issues to be raised in such a way as to give unions a more permanent position on climate stuff. Could we raise climate disputes effectively and win them in these kind of settings? That's an open question, I guess. And then the kind of last one is slightly provocative, I suppose. Where do we have common interests with bosses? Will a kind of I suppose that's the kind of danger with working with in these kind of framework for change positions. Are you only meeting where you have a common interest, or is it a space where you could genuinely have discussions and kind of fight through to find an idea that works for both of you? So they're the kind of things that I think we should be thinking about, and it's the kind of framing for these jobs and action, climate action and jobs plans that the TUC is thinking about. So I wonder if we want to just open that up and have a chat about that at this point. So I mean, I guess first question, initial thoughts on that. I'd be a little interested to hear specifically from people who've done green rep training or offer it, whether this is the kind of slightly more provocative side of that kind of relationship with employers, whether that's something that you foster or approve of or not, or things, your thoughts there. We'll go to Debbie first. She had her hand up first.
Hello. Yeah, I put a few links in the chat because there are things like the Liverpool University Green New Deal Joint Union claim, which is staff unions and the Guild of Students, and I'm not sure where that's got up to, but they're demanding quite a few of the things that Sam was mentioning. And then just that last question about common interests, far be it from me, but you know how universities, well, and other places, they're a bit balmy about league tables. So there's a group called People and Planet that have got university league tables, and they're campaigning to kick fossil fuels off campuses, to get them out of careers fairs and things like that. And they regularly post their league tables. Whether that has any impact on university bosses, I have no idea. And also the NUS, I mean, they ran, I think they're still doing a thing called Green Impact, and that got me started on a lot of this. Well, that and the Climate Jobs book that I discovered sort of early days. But that Green Impact thing, it's all very ticky boxy. And other organisations are now doing similar things. Even the churches have got a scheme where you can get bronze and then silver and then gold, and then you go on to platinum. And I think I mean, oh gosh, you know, after what you said about 1.5, you know, all these little things seem daft. But given that a lot of people are still on a learning curve, I think there was a lot of useful learning that went on there. And given that universities are supposed to be about learning, you know, it introduced me to stuff that I've then passed on. So various things there, sorry to lump them all together.
No, that's good. That's helpful stuff. Thanks, Debbie. I think the importance of those league tables is quite significant, because you're right, although we're maybe coming at it from a different way, we can kind of use that stuff to put pressure on, you know, realizing that it's valuable for the employer, even if it's not necessarily valuable for the trade union. And it's a kind of a way of putting pressure there. We'll go to Catherine. Actually, before you get going, I'll just Dave Merritt came in while I was speaking. So hi, Dave. Welcome to the group. Catherine, do you want to?
Right, yeah. I think it's a really good thing to do to make sure that you're having conversations at all times. And I've told many people in this group that we declared a climate emergency. Wakefield NEU declared a climate emergency, or we took it that the union had declared a climate emergency, and took it to our schools JCC, and we take it an item to schools JCC every time we meet. And we put it on the agenda, and it is. And the other unions are very, positive and tolerant. They don't think of their own items for this, but they are willing for it to be discussed, and are willing for us to sort of bend the ear of the local authority on this. And so it really does make a difference there. And we've looked at transport to work policies and air pollution monitoring and cycle sheds and biodiversity, for mental health reasons and all sorts of issues. So that on the 22nd or 24th, I'm meeting with the school's director man about the school's education nature park, the National Education Nature Park, and what we can do about that. That's because we do solid work continuously alongside talking about all the other issues that unions do talk about. So that's a positive thing. So that's a sort of in a branch work. We attended the West Yorkshire Combined Authority consultations on buses, and I thought it was quite it was a very informative thing. I sort of put my hand up and said, I'm part of West Yorkshire, I'm here on behalf of Wakefield Trades Council, and of course workers need better buses to get them to work, and of course we need better bus drivers, better pay and condition bus drivers. But the level of knowledge or lack of knowledge by the combined authority officers, I thought was quite staggering, actually. You know, they knew about trade unions, but they hadn't really consulted with, you know, thought about consulting with the trade unions, and they certainly hadn't considered consulting with the trades councils as a grassroots organisation of lots of ways of getting to them. And I thought there's a lot of work that we need to do to make sure that all the work that Simon's going to want to do on working with the West Yorkshire Mayor, we need to make sure that we're continuing, you know, the dialogue with the as a combating. And it's one of the reasons that we reconstituted the West Yorkshire TU Association of Trades Councils, was so that we had that sort of grassroots organisation. I think we've got to make sure that we keep on representing. I know it's a bit of a challenge, and I'm very glad that you're in post now, Sam. You know, but you know, in the way that the TUC is reorganising, you know, at present, then we have to make sure that we keep that sort of constant, you know, and we'll need to do it with the South Yorkshire Mayor and the West Yorkshire Mayor to keep that sort of conversation going on. And then nationally, of course, there is a challenge on the boycotting legislation that's going through today, you know, that's today. It's being done about Palestine, but, you know, the potential for banishing anything on equal, you know, grounds that are contrary to national policy are absolutely there, aren't they? Because it was considered primarily on that grounds earlier on. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. That's all really useful stuff. Just to echo what you said about the combined authority, I'm always amazed by this. They think they're consulting. You realize you're halfway through a conversation. They thought they'd spoken to the workers. It turns out they don't even know how the workers are represented and who speaks on their behalf. So I think that's a lesson for us in our movement, as well as to educate others. But I think in Yorkshire, we're relatively fortunate with the mayors that we've got and the local authorities that we've got, in that they're at least sympathetic to our general ideas. Okay, John, you need to go. That's fine. Thanks for joining us for this time. Let's go to Rosie.
I wasn't going to say very much because I'm staff, so I'm always a little bit like hold back a bit. But as things you asked, maybe it's useful because I suppose the advantage of having a sort of a role that's a bit more administrative is that I do meet green reps from across the country. So I mean, what Catherine's talked about is exemplary, isn't it? It's great, and I think Catherine's sort of demonstrating what we're hoping could be rolled out in other areas. And I actually think I've not been working on this for forever and ever, but it does seem that Yorkshire is really up front in terms of development of NEU members organising around green and environmental issues, which is great because I'm in Sheffield, so I'm very happy that that's the case. So yeah, in terms of the stuff on the presentation and whether it kind of aligns, you said the more provocative side of things, so kind of making demands, organising and so on around these demands. Yeah, what's in the NEU's course, and we've only piloted it once, but it was received very well, was very much a focus on bargaining, and we use some of what UCU have already got out there to kind of inform that, and it is a really different situation. We're obviously both education unions, but with UCU we've got a lot of workers in one employer, in, for example, university or a college, whereas NEU we're looking at much smaller workplaces with much smaller kind of units, because we imagine one school or potentially one primary school, but it could be one school, or it could be a group of schools in a multi-academy trust. So that might be where you're looking to negotiate. So it is a lot smaller, and we have to think about all of those different contexts. So what we're doing is it sounds quite similar. You said the Spark campaigns are kind of small, kind of achievable, starting somewhere. We talked about that, and I think that the things that came up that felt like first steps that people could work around, maybe at a school level, perhaps at a multi-school level, but it was definitely people were thinking with a one school level, was curriculum. So it's something that they felt that they could probably get the school communities, that includes leadership, so that's management, but also potentially parents and young people on board with, was changing to around green curriculum as a kind of starting point. It was also something that a lot of NEU members are a bit more familiar with, I think, as an area. Green curriculum is quite well developed. But we definitely looked at retrofit and other bigger things as kind of next steps for demands. If you've seen all the stuff about RAC in the media, you'll know that a lot of schools desperately need rebuilding, retrofitting anyway. So it's a kind of hopefully a good opportunity there. So yeah, we did a lot of work around how to bargain and how to make demands and how to create and leverage power in the workplace. And I'll again, one of the questions are our interests aligned with management? I mean, I think we probably may share some views on this, but what was interesting in the context of being an educator in a school setting, I think, is that it's quite mixed, and is in primary schools in particular, often people do feel like their interests are quite aligned until something throws that into relief. So starting a campaign might suddenly show that there is a difference of interest between the head perhaps and other educators in the school, but may not necessarily. I think quite a lot of people have got quite sympathetic head teachers actually. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixture. I hope that's useful. We are also looking, some of the Green reps are looking at something quite similar to what Catherine said. So maybe grouping together with schools in a local authority area, or maybe in a multi-academy trust group, to make demands at that level, because then they've got more power, more bargaining power, and they're a bigger group of workers. You can also make a claim to the public sector decarbonisation scheme as a group of schools, and get that money probably more easily than as an individual school. So that's one thing we've talked to people about. Those are some of my examples, but if anybody wants to know any more about what we're doing, then and there are some really good news stories, I will say, from the people who've been on the last course already. One person, within a week of coming back from the course, his head agreed to have solar panels put on every roof in the school. So stuff that I thought would be a lot harder than it was. So, you know, I was feeling quite positive, but those are some examples from us. I hope that's useful.
That definitely is useful. Thanks, Rosie. I think, yeah, this is kind of, it sometimes happens, doesn't it? People realize that no one's asked for something before, but actually, you know, if you do ask, then maybe some things are just given immediately. We don't have to fight for it. We don't have to fight for everything. I mean, we have to be prepared to fight, but we don't have to fight for everything. I think the situation of schools is particularly interesting, and I guess the potential for common interest is probably a lot stronger because, you know, it is a public service thing, and heads, at least until maybe not so much with some of the multi-academy trusts or that kind of way of doing things, but heads usually are, you know, just good teachers, or, you know, you'd hope they would be, rather than kind of something imposed from above, or a kind of business leader in a way that it would be the case in other workplaces. Probably less true now than it was maybe 10 years ago or something, but I mean, still, you know, that's an interesting difference between, say, you know, a construction firm or something where that divide is a lot stronger. Zach has joined us, so welcome, Zach, to the group. Thanks for coming.
Hello.
In.
I just thought I'd drop in and say hi. I did a fabulous course with Sam last year in August. It feels like this year, obviously we're in the new year, and I just thought I'd come and say hi and just listen in to the great work.
No, thanks for joining. Shall we go to Simon, who I think had his hand up next?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I've just posted in the chat box a link to a report which we did a couple of years ago, which is looking at our Green Jobs emergency plan, which is about really kind of looking at actually what needs to happen to kind of bring more apprenticeships and more young people into green jobs. Happy to kind of discuss that. I think in terms of when you mentioned the kind of Lucas plan, I think one of the things that struck me is that actually in a lot of workplaces in Yorkshire and Humber, there are a lot of kind of potential negative impacts from the green transition in terms of job security into the future. You look at the Scunthorpe steel plants, where actually the recent announcements are probably going to lead to significant job losses. And I guess one of the kind of questions around actually how much of this can be brought into discussions at union and representative level to kind of press on employers, and more wider, that kind of need for having a sound transition plan rather than that kind of shock of actually we want to invest in an electric arc furnace and it's going to be result in X number of job losses. So I guess that kind of question around making sure that planning goes into place.
I think that's really valuable. Thank you. And you're right. There are some real dangers here. You know, we're in a risk area, especially in Yorkshire, but also, you know, generally this is a something, you know, any transition like this has the potential to be sudden and not work for the workforce. And where we see these kind of climate plans, they usually come late. I mean, the Lucas plan came after you know, the place was going to be essentially shut down, and what's happening in GKN in Italy at the moment, you know, is a similar thing. You know, they've shut the plant, and then they're sort of retrospectively coming together and trying to work out, you know, how it could have been kept open. So I suppose that's the thinking behind these kind of climate jobs action plans, that if we're proactive, if we put forward, look, this is our vision for the future, and you know, it can be done in X, you know, number of steps or whatever, then it puts us in the best possible position to avoid these kind of catastrophic close downs. I mean, the Scunthorpe example is very pertinent, and I mean, a similar thing has happened down in Port Albert recently, where we're talking about thousands of job losses. Made essentially not because, you know, not because the unions were unaware of this stuff, you know, potentially happening, but because they didn't go for the union plan. So I mean, the union plans in both cases were about phase transitions and about maintaining good quality steel production, which the electric arc furnaces unfortunately don't really provide. You know, it's essentially recycled steel production, and obviously job losses as a result of scaling back. There's some good examples actually from what's the firm that owns Port Albert? Can't remember, but they have a plant in the Netherlands as well, where they have not moved to an electric arc furnace. What they've actually done is kind of maintain most of the workforce in discussion with the trade unions, and sort of done a slower transition away through essentially using a lot more electricity to maintain the existing blast furnace kind of style. So it can be done. You know, it's all about political choice, isn't it? I suppose is the bottom line of this. But if we put ourselves forward as early as possible with as detailed a plan as possible, I think we can potentially avert. Not going to win every battle, but we can avert some of this, some of these catastrophes from happening in the first place. Tata, Ellen, you're entirely right. It is Tata Steel that does Port Albert and the Netherlands one. Has anyone else got any comments or thoughts about that stuff at this moment? No, good stuff. So we got 20 minutes left or so, we'll leave a bit for any other business at the end, but I wonder if following that, do we feel that that there's potential for particular workplaces, or I'm sort of extending this to communities and charity groups and things as well, because I think, you know, we all need to change. Trade unions, you know, need to change how we're doing things. We're actually a relatively ungreen, untransformed sector as a body on ourselves. So do we need to think about setting up these climate jobs action plans? Is it something that anyone would be willing to think about, or, you know, does it spark any thoughts going forward? Ellen, do you want to come in?
Just talking about the steel issues, that it just, I think it really, something it really underlines is the importance of getting wider than the individual workplace, because, you know, what can happen for steel depends. So, I mean, for example, you know, the community/GMB plan makes the statement that green hydrogen won't be available in sufficient quantities to do direct reduction technologies until the 2040s. Well, that's how long is a piece of string? You know, that depends on how we campaign. It depends on what the wider plan is for, you know, you can't look at any particular industry in isolation. You've got a whole complex of stuff there. You know, it's about how energy is generated. It's about what type of hydrogen we go for and how we prioritize it. And then there's all the downstream stuff as well, like you know, one of their major issues is not being able to produce the quality of steel needed for road vehicles. But at the same time, how many road vehicles are we going to need in 10, 20 years' time? That also depends very much on what transition pathways we take. So I think it's you know, constantly thinking about how all these different elements are interdependent as well, and that you can't have a, I mean, on a small scale, obviously, within a workplace, you can think about retrofitting the building. You can think about what's the word, you know, where you source stuff from and how you dispose of things, and you know, there's a lot of things you can think about. But big questions like that, they're all so interdependent. So I think, I mean, one of the things that the motion asks for is actually, I forget the exact wording, but it recognises the need for integrated planning. That's going to mean collaboration between different sectors and between different unions as well, to create, you know, take more of a whole economy kind of perspective, which is it's a hell of a big thing to be looking for. But yeah, I just think it's always important to bear that in mind, and not just settle for the you know, different sectors working in silos.
I think that's important, and I think we've seen that a little bit with the. Oh, sorry. Do you mind if I mute you? I think we've seen that a little bit with some of the claims that, I mean, obviously, the UCU claim, national pay claim last year came out with green elements in it that kind of went to the whole sector or the whole kind of area there. And so it's kind of trying to think bigger than workplace, and it's trying to think, you know, in that kind of broader, holistic, sectoral kind of way. And I think if we can encourage, you know, further up the chain in these in our unions and associated organisations, that kind of holistic thinking and those kind of super ambitious levels, then we obviously see that. And I think there's also, I mean, it's slightly controversial, obviously, but there are probably spaces for compromise as well, which I think we need to be aware of, and that unions in particular workplaces are quite good at, you know, finding and could negotiate. So while we sort of from the outside may not favour certain solutions, when talking to the unions at, say, Drax Power Station, they are not as skeptical about the carbon capture possibilities there, for instance, as others from the outside might be. And so I think there's probably an element here of realising where we're at and not keeping as many intact eggs in our basket as possible, I suppose. Rosie, you pop your hand up.
Yeah, I did. One thing I didn't mention, but does feel quite pertinent, is that it was quite important for me, and well, for all of us really, that the course and the way that we're talking about being a green rep in an education setting to any people that are coming on the course was in an understanding of themselves as, yes, trade unionists, within NEU, but also part of the broader movement. And there does something quite interesting about a couple of public sector type of workplaces, schools in particular. Perhaps there are other, you know, maybe healthcare, that sort of thing, where you're regularly speaking to a very wide range of people in the in the community. As a trade unionist who is also talking about sustainability and just transition, that provides this opportunity to talk about just transition at a much wider level. So we did some work right at the beginning of the course that after reviewing it, I think we're going to expand, where sort of, you know, visioning for a green community, as you might do, like kind of all the things we would want to happen, but then we also looked at what the impact that would be on all the other sectors that were represented in the community. So, you know, for example, if we want to stop the Amazon distribution centre from existing, that exists down the road from your local school that you work in, what does that mean for the workers there? So we had all those conversations, and I think it would be really useful to think about how to almost exploit that amazing channel of communication that certainly NEU members do have in the community. They speak to people, you know, they are working with the children of people in every single industry in the UK. I don't think I didn't get the impression that they quite realised how potentially influential they could be, because they really are everywhere. But once we started opening up those conversations, you know, their local context is, you know, people in Cumbria who are based near this power station, or people who are in a rural area where there's a lot of, you know, pesticides being used in agricultural areas and that sort of thing. And there is this opportunity, and I feel like more work needs to be done. I think it's probably about how to have sensitive conversations as a trade unionist outside of your own membership, because you are an advocate much more widely than your own membership for the environmental sustainability issues, I think. And it is a bit of a step change, I think, from day-to-day trade union activity, isn't it, where you're mainly focused on your own membership. So for me, this is something that the TUC is probably best set up to think about. And I just I guess I'm always looking for good examples and case studies of this sort of thing, you know, where people having these conversations and they're going well. It may be that we come out with some, but if anybody's got good examples of that sort of thing in communities across industry that doesn't feel like an attack but feels like a collective piece of work together, I'd be really interested in hearing about them.
Definitely, thanks, Rosie. As would we. My next, or one of my goals, is to publish as many case studies as possible here to show that we're actually quite effective. Green reps can really do quite good stuff, not only for their own workplaces but often for wider communities as well. We have some really good examples, but more the merrier, that we can publish and sing the praises of. Dave.
Yeah, it's coming on the back of the last two, to be honest, Ellen and Rosie. My ears pricked up a bit when Rosie mentioned the hydrogen involvement the GMB have had. And I just wanted to touch on the trial that just failed to go ahead in Redcar. And not really about whether we're doing hydrogen or whether we're doing anything else, but the lack of support politically to trial something that may be a solution was ultimately massively disappointing. Labour councillors and politicians seem to be in a position now where they want to stay away from change, whatever it may be, hydrogen, whatever. It seems that they don't want to upset the apple cart in order to upset the voters, and a very small minority of people that may be affected by change. Whoever shouts loudest on social media seems to get get their way because they feel like it may affect the voters. I don't know what we can do in terms of political pressure around these types of politicians and these types of councillors who seem to want to stand in the way of the change, because in that it was very obvious in that gas network trial that they didn't want it to go ahead. You know, they didn't want to support the trial. It was a trial that was going to take place for 2 years and then be put back to how it was. There was a huge amount of benefits for the residents in Redcar if they'd have been educated properly. So it's very disappointing in terms of the Labour Party, from our perspective, that they haven't got the workforce involved, and in turn, because they haven't got the workforce involved, the customer facing workforce, that they weren't able to put a bit more education out there to the general public about the benefits of moving on. And I don't know where we're stuck with it. It's a bit of a chicken and egg moment around the carbon capture, the hydrogen production, the electrical network. Unless somebody's willing to collectively create a supply and demand, we're just going to stagnate, because the electrical network can't cope with us all going fully electrical. The gas network can't continue as it is because it produces too much carbon. So unless somebody, you know, politically or, you know, joins these CEOs together at the hip and they all start working together, it's not going to happen, because it can't happen. It's impossible. We can't use the existing network. We can't produce the hydrogen without creating a supply and demand that reduces the price of it. We're just stagnating at the moment. So I don't know what we do to try and put these politicians under a bit more pressure to support change, rather than just, you know, run with the loudest speakers. But it was very disappointing up in Redcar, and analysing what had happened and the misinformation that was put out there to the residents there, which in turn just destroyed the project.
Thanks, Dave. I think there'll, I imagine, be strong views on both sides of this around the room. But you're right. It's an interesting issue that it was almost pre-decided where community support would be from politicians, and that hampered any possibility of that being successful up in Redcar. Obviously, similar schemes have been kind of across the country. You know, there is stuff going on, isn't there? But not in that same way.
It seems with around, you know, the social housing sort of PH Jones network we represent in the GMB, it's, from my perspective, it looks great on paper. It looks great as a tick box exercise. I think when they retrofit an estate, you know, possibly 10 to 20% of those homes get, you know, a heat pump fitted and it all retrofitted with brilliant insulation, and they seem to tick that box. But at the same time, you know, the other 80% of that estate's getting a gas boiler. So it's not really helping things. They're getting new gas boilers that'll run for another 20 years, you know, and there's no climate change there. We've just created a sustainable gas solution for the next 20 years. There's no impact on the environment other than the fact we've ticked a few boxes. And I think in order to get the contracts, you have to get an electric van, you know, and prove that you're not running a diesel van. And they get a van for a cut price due to a grant they get for this van, and then off they are away fitting gas boilers again. And it's just an abuse of the sort of schemes that are out there, and without somebody taking control of it and actually figuring out we're not doing anything for the environment, we're just chugging along as we are. I don't really know how we grab hold of it without political pressure and without taking stuff under public ownership, you know.
Yeah, no, very well said. And I think you're right. I think there is a lot of this going on. Greenwashing is still very much, you know, active greenwashing in terms of fraud of government schemes.
It's not really fraud, is it? It's just doing what you need to do to achieve what you want to achieve, you know.
Sure, yeah, from a business point of view.
Capitalist model, you know.
Yeah. So I mean, there's obviously there's a lot of difficult stuff here. I think who knows, but individual councillors and politicians, I think we as a movement could do better engaging with them. I think what you do is really good at kind of calling out some of this stuff, Dave, and others on this call. But you're right. I think I guess the sort of central or underlying point is that this stuff is political. You can't get away from that. And I think trade unions don't, maybe not the TUC so much, but certain trade unions don't necessarily embrace the political nature of this stuff in the way that they could. You know, it's quite workplace specific. And I think probably it needs to be both. You know, we need to remember that we have political power and that we can influence things from a political and lobbying point of view. I mean, that's from a TUC point of view, a lot of what we do. You know, we're quite, especially in Yorkshire, we're fairly well ensconced in some of the policy making bodies and advisory boards and things like this, which is great because it gives the movement a good voice on this stuff. But yeah, we could definitely all do a lot more. And the politicization of individual branches and things would be a really positive step, I think, in tackling these issues. We're almost out of time. So has anyone got any final quick thoughts before we wrap up? No, excellent. And is there any other business that anyone would wanted to raise? Yeah, Catherine.
I wondered if we could say a thank you to Martin May, who's had to step back, hasn't he? You know, because he's been really fundamental to a lot of this work. So if our group could send a thank you to Martin May.
Definitely, I think that will be widely supported. Yes, he has been. It's a real pity. He has had to step back for obvious reasons, but he's been really central to this for a long time, and he will be missed in this forum and in others. So yeah, we'll send something from the network as a whole, just to say that to him. Okay, brilliant. Well, we're pretty much out of time, so thank you all for attending and for your excellent insights and discussion. Hope it kind of gets people thinking and has been useful. Not sure what we'll do in the next one. If anyone has any ideas, shout up now, or let me know. Otherwise, there is a list to work through, so we'll go to the next item. Okay, brilliant. Well, thanks for coming all. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye for now.
Bye.
See ya.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks.